Welcome back to Drop a Jewel with Malaka. Today I have a special guest and I have a special topic. And I think all my guests are very special, but today we're going to dive into love. And it is my pleasure to introduce Carisa Montooth. She's a love coach and a sixth generation healer. And I guess maybe some of you might be wondering, well, what's that? What's a sixth generation healer? And what's a love coach? Well, I'll tell you this. Carisa helps successful women attract their right mate, their right partner. And almost 90% of her clients are in successful relationships, and they're happy in those relationships. So without further ado, let me welcome Carisa Montooth. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I
How
love
you
our
doing?
conversations.
Yes, outside of the show, me and Carisa, we've been getting along pretty good.
We've been having some good conversations.
Yes, I mean, I think those conversations need to be taped too, right?
Yeah, I wish we had recorded them.
Yep, I do too. Maybe I don't know, maybe some type of technology can help us do that, right? But Carisa, it is my honor and pleasure to know you. I mean, we talk about some real good stuff. And I think as Black women, we're both in unique experiences. Well, we both have unique experiences around love. And
Mhm.
so, but I think also being a love coach and just hearing about what you do really intrigued me because I think right now is a really important time for people to get some help. We need some help, y'all.
Yes, we do. There's like an epidemic of loneliness right now in our country,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah,
it is.
it's a weird thing. Like we want romantic love, but we also want community, like people feel really isolated right now.
Yeah.
It's a big
Well,
thing.
yes, Carissa, before we get into all that, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do. Give us a little bit more of, before we get into all that loneliness and, tell us who you are.
So I am a love coach and a sixth generation healer. My academic background is that I have degrees in psychology and in counseling. But the way that I got into love coaching was that I grew up in a family of healers,
Okay.
so I'm the sixth, my generation is the sixth of those that group, right? So I have this legacy in my family of healing, and of just being in a family of really spiritually aware women, you know.
Okay. That's a powerful family. I love to
That's
be
a
here.
very powerful family. And when I was growing up, I didn't appreciate that as much as I did as I got older, right? And I thought it was I thought it was normal. But then as I got a little bit older, I could see that people thought we were kind of weird. Some of the things that we did were kind of weird.
What y'all doing now? Hold on. What
Yeah,
y'all
like
doing? What y'all
what's all this about actually? Because we had in my family, we had dowsers, and we had midwives, and we had herbalists, and just all these different people in our family who were different kinds of healers. And for me, growing up, I thought, okay, so this is normal. That's a normal thing. But then I would
Right.
see as I was growing up, other people thought that that was kind of weird. And for me, I was like, well, I still want to be able to help people, but I'm going to have to do it in a way that's legit, right? Like that people will understand. So that's why I got my degrees in psychology and in counseling, because I was like, well, I'll go into academia because that's really well respected, right? I'll get my credentials together, was
Right.
my thought about it. So
Right.
I went into that and I started teaching, and I actually started teaching at the college level. I would teach like intro to college classes as a counselor
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And I was teaching how to match your career with your values. So like, what's your personality? What are your values, and how to choose your
Right.
career from that. But I found women were coming up to me after class and they were like, so I think I'm this personality type, but I think my boyfriend is this personality type. Like, how can we have this conversation?
Ah.
Like taking our relationship to
Yeah.
another level, or like committing to each other, moving in, or getting married, like those kind of conversations.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I can help these women, but not in this setting.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
academia going for it.
Yeah, it wasn't, they weren't going to go for it. It wasn't
They're not going for it. They're not going for it.
good.
Well, what do you think it was? Or perhaps they could go for it. Now there's so much they go for nowadays. But what do you think it was about you that they were attracted to ask those questions? Because it's one thing to talk about, like matching your career with your values, but then, hey, after that conversation. By the way, what you think about this relationship? Or,
Yeah.
just slide that right in. And
I
that's
think it's
always
kind of like,
happening. Yeah.
I think it's kind of an empath thing. And I'm sure, and I know you've experienced this before too, where
Oh,
like
yes.
people tell you things,
Yeah,
like
they do.
strangers tell you things. And they're like, they always tell you things that are and they'll be like, I've never told anybody this before, or
Yeah.
they'll tell you something and they'll be like, I've never said that out loud, or I didn't realize that was still something that was upsetting to me, or I didn't even realize I still remember that. They confide things in us because they feel they can tell that we're safe,
Keyword, feel. They feel something, right? You
They
mentioned
can
the word.
feel it. They can feel that we're safe. They can feel that we are we mean them well. Like we're not into how there are certain people that you have to kind of be careful around them because
Yes.
that you see the way they gossip or you see the way they handle other
Yep.
people's, you know, um business and sensitivity and stuff like
I'll,
that. You see
I'll
how
say
they
it like
operate in the
this.
world.
I'll say it like this, Carissa. When people talk about people and they come around me and they're talking about people, I said, ooh, the same way they talking about her is the same way they
They're
talk
talking
about
about
me.
me. They're doing the same thing. Yeah, exactly. And you can tell they're not safe. You can
Yeah.
tell those people aren't safe. And I think that people, the same way we can tell certain people are not safe, we can tell that certain people are. And we feel it even like on a subconscious level. Because the thing that people tell me the most often is they're like, I love your energy. They'll be like, I love your energy. And I'm like, what they're feeling is that I'm a safe person for them, that I mean them well. They
Okay.
can tell that I mean them
Okay.
well.
Right. I like that. So I can connect with that. And I think that's a good way to explain it. But I also think about, too, on a flip side, that we have people that love our energy, but then being an empath, right? That must be scary, right? Because, or let me not say scary, but it could be challenging because just as much as people can seek out that energy and appreciate that energy, you have some people who seek it out for the wrong reasons, right?
Yeah.
Especially in relationships, right?
In relationships, oh my gosh, empaths are so attractive to narcissists.
Yes. Okay, say that
You
one more
know,
time. Say that one more time.
empaths are very, very attractive to narcissists because here you've got this bottomless pit of taking on the one side, and then you've
Mm-hmm.
got this endless giver on the other side, right?
Mm.
And it's
Ooh.
just like that those two things together, like we will give as an empath, you'll give, and even when you barely have anything left to give, you'll still try to find something more to give. And sometimes we give because we think we can love a narcissist into loving us back. We can love a narcissist into being a healthy person and actually, being good for us. And you can't ever love anybody into loving you if they're not a healthy person.
Right.
So
So as your love coach, can you define to me what's a narcissist? Because I hear a lot of people using that word nowadays, and I think I've had a few narcissist people around me, and I'm like, yeah, you're a narcissist. But to our audience, as far as in the context of love and relationships, what is a narcissist?
So a narcissist is somebody who, and it is something that we want to define, right? Because a lot of times we throw around pop culture, pop psychology terms, and people don't, just kind of
Yeah.
use them in regular conversation and don't really know what it's about. But
Uh-huh.
a narcissist is somebody who has no empathy and they have no ability to have empathy. The best that they can do is that they can kind of mimic what empathy looks like if they have enough training. And most narcissists don't care about what empathy looks like unless it's in service of manipulating.
Ah,
So for the most part, that's what a narcissist is. It's like, and it's not just that somebody has a really high opinion of themselves, or it's not just that somebody's arrogant or something like that. It's that someone has such a lack of empathy that they can literally only see the world in terms of what everybody can do for them.
I see.
They
Okay.
have no And it borders in terms of like psychopaths and sociopaths, in terms of like psychopaths and sociopaths don't have conscience. Mm-hmm. Right. So people will be like, how can you sleep at night? They sleep fine at night.
Like a baby.
They don't care. They sleep like a baby, you know. Narcissists are a little different than that, just because they just lack the empathy. It just doesn't occur to them. So for empaths, we are walking through the world feeling everything. We literally, like, there are so many different kinds of empaths, but essentially it's that we see the world we see what the world looks like for other people constantly. Right. And we're always sort of like seeing the world from their perspective. And it's an unconscious thing. We don't have to try to do it. We just automatically are doing it, you know? And there's actually like an energy component to that, because as soon as we're with someone face to face and we make eye contact with them, it's like this merge happens. And now we can see the world like they would see the world, you know? And so that's like a natural thing where empaths just do that. And we're kind of born with that switch turned on. Yeah. So what empaths need to learn to do to function in a healthy way in relationships is we actually have to learn how to turn our empath switch off and just turn it on when we need it, you know, because narcissists pick it up immediately.
They pick it up. They just know immediately. And remember when we were talking, and I was like, we were talking about like a lot of different relationships, and how a lot of like toxic relationships or unhealthy relationships have some similar qualities and traits, but a lot of those qualities and traits would happen or start with, you know, this one person being empathetic or always trying to like help or fix things. But then you have this other person who is that kind of narcissist behavior. But remember, I mentioned something like, hey, is there a webinar, or are these guys going to a webinar? Because they're all doing like the same things. Different people don't know each other. And you hear these stories where, and I'll use, you know, certain relationships where maybe the guy is like, maybe had a baby on a girl, or is cheating with several people, or
anything that Usher wrote a song about. Pretty much.
Right. But you know, but even like as I start to like look at relationships with a lot of people, like just in my practice in life, right? As a social worker and an expert around those things, and just a human being who observes life, right? I start to notice there's a certain pattern in a lot of unhealthy relationships. And that's why I said, are these guys going to like webinars? Because how do they not know each other, but all know how to do the same thing, right?
Right.
Isn't that kind of weird?
It is weird, but I think part of it is because we do this. Well, there are so many layers to this, right? It's like we could talk about this the whole time. Some of it is patriarchy, right? Because it's this idea of like, what I see really often, and this goes with the whole culture of like bros with microphones doing podcasts trying to tell women their version of tough love, which is like, if you are single and you're a single mom or whatever, you're going to have to lower your standards. Or if you are over 40, you're going to need to look like Halle Berry if you're over 40 and you're single. Or if you're still single, you've been single forever, you need to lower your standards because it's this whole idea of trying to make women think less of themselves so that they will settle for men who are not their equal. And
say that one more time. Hold on, say that one more time. You don't need to drop a jewel, so you just drop a jewel real quick. So just don't
because that's what happens. That's what that whole podcast culture, the patriarchy and the misogyny that drive that are all. I mean, because if you think of like a man who's sitting in front of a mic and thinks everyone in the world needs to hear what he has to say, you have to be a special kind of, and I use special loosely, right? But you have to be kind of like a special kind of guy to think that like every woman in the world needs to hear what you have to say about what it is to be a woman and date. I mean, like that's, you know, but what it is this misogyny and this patriarchy that drive this culture of men who are experts in how women who deem themselves as experts in how women should behave, right? And how women should value themselves. And the whole idea is I'm going to tell you things to convince you to devalue yourself, to estimate your worth as a partner lower, so that you will settle for someone who is not equal to you, because that just makes it easier for all of these men. Then it's easier for them to try to pull these women down than it is for them to try to live up to their best self.
Go ahead.
It's easier for them to try to pull women down to their level than it is for them to heal and to grow and to take responsibility for their own feelings and their own mental health and their choices and, you know, whatever those things are. So that's a huge part of it. It's like this cultural thing of that.
It is cultural, and it is that patriarchy system. And I think a lot of it has to do just with these systems that just don't work, have failed people forever. Capitalism, right, is one of those systems, right?
And they're all entwined.
They're all entwined. They need each other to work, like all these different systems. But I also think too, like, I just think like relationships are, when a person gets in a relationship, I think it's really important that they know their self, right? Like they have a sense of identity. You may not be this evolved human being, but you got to know who you are and feel confident. Because one thing you just mentioned is like in the relationship, like a guy might try to bring this woman's self-esteem down and tell her like you should be this, and you know, constantly put these messages in her head that are unrealistic. But if you know yourself and have a strong sense of identity and self, you can laugh at that, right? You can like denounce that in a way, like you can push back on that and you won't accept it, so you won't believe it. But if you don't know yourself, if you don't have a sense of identity, if you don't have self-esteem, anyone can say anything about you and you'll believe it. And then you'll start to manifest it, and it will start to become part of who you are. Like in the context of like, if I say right now, you know what, I don't like your earrings. And before you got on this phone, this call today, you said, "Well, my earrings."
I was like, "My earrings are cute."
Earrings. And if I say, "Yo, I don't like those earrings," so the person who has a strong sense of identity was like, "Well, that's too bad because I do." Right. Right. But the person who may not have the strongest sense of identity and self-esteem will be like, "Well, what's wrong? What's wrong with them? Why don't you like them? What should I do? Should I try a different one? You don't like it?" And I'm not saying every circumstance is like that, but that art is like an example of kind of what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it leaves people open to gaslighting. It leaves people vulnerable to being gaslit, right? Because it's like, somebody, if you don't have your feet really firmly on the ground, if you don't have a firm enough idea of who you are, if you don't know yourself that well, and you don't and even beyond that, like beyond knowing ourselves is loving and accepting ourselves.
Yes, loving. That's about being real, loving yourself, loving yourself, loving yourself. Keyword, loving yourself. Oh my goodness. Keywords, loving yourself.
It's such a huge part of it, right? Because then not only are you not going to believe that other person, it's not so much that you won't believe them, but like they can say whatever they want, and not only does it not offend you, but you know it has nothing to do with you. You know, really, they're just talking about whatever their perspective. It says more about their perspective of the world than it does about you in any way. Like you get it, and you're not moved constantly. And part of that is the people pleasing thing that's like ingrained into women. Right, is like this idea that we have to set ourselves on fire to keep the rest of the world warm.
I'm tired of that. Like, I just want to just like wear like slippers and like pajamas all day. I used to wear suits and stuff all the time. I used to be like, let's give me some leggings, like, but I'm tired, like trying to please everybody. Like,
need some comfy socks.
Right? I want to be comfortable. Stop trying to please everybody. But no, I want to say this. So let's get into this thing, right? Like, is it hard to be a love coach? I mean, come on, it's 2023. What is love? Like, what is that?
I think it's hard to be a human being in 2023. Like, so many things have changed in terms of what we thought were non-negotiables in the world, or even just what we thought were solid things in the world. So many things have changed. When they were like, oh yeah, UFOs are real and we've known about it for a long time. I was like, hold on.
I know it though. I've been knowing it. But
but it was still the kind of thing that was like, it's just an example of like how much what we think is, you know, what we've been used to thinking of as just real and true has shifted so much. One of the things that's come up is this idea that like, I hear people say a lot, like dating is so much harder. Dating is so much harder. Dating is so much harder because of online dating and all these other things.
Yep.
Dating isn't harder. Dating is not
it's
harder.
not?
No, it's not harder. We're just doing it in a weird way. Like one of the things that we do is that, like with dating apps, one of the things that we do is that we go into this place, this digital world, and we meet a stranger, and we look for reasons to fall in love with them.
Okay.
And that's weird.
Right.
That's weird. It doesn't go stranger to lover. It goes stranger to friend to possibly lover.
Right.
So we're not like going into situations with the intention of creating community or friendships. We're going into situations trying to turn a stranger into a lover.
Okay. So, well, how do people date? Because like social media is big, and that is the biggest way for people to date.
Yeah.
What if someone's been in a relationship for 10 years and hasn't dated or for a long term, and coming out of that situation, they're like, oh, where do I start? Where do I go? They have no clue. It's totally different, right?
Yeah.
So like there's a lot of people who are getting divorced now. The divorce rates have skyrocketed. People are in long-term relationships over 20 years, 10 years, whatever, and are getting divorced. So like, where do they start, right? If they don't even, they haven't been on social media, like looking for love, maybe dealing with family members, but not connecting in this way. So how, like, where do we start? Like, where do people start in 2023?
Well, we start actually not by dating. Like if we've come out of a situation that was painful and we've had a breakup and we're dealing with heartache, we need to take a minute and heal.
Okay.
And that's the first thing. We need to take a minute and heal. And get support in that in whatever way that we need to. And sometimes that's through therapy. Sometimes that's through working with a healer. Sometimes, you know, there are a few different ways that we do that. So healing is first, because it's kind of like triage, right? So you're in a situation where you go, what is the most damage that's been done, and what is critical that we need to deal with? Let's deal with that, right? And when we come out of a situation where our hearts have been broken, there can be some really critical damage there. We can have trauma from that. We can have earlier traumas that are triggered by that we've never dealt with and never healed. So healing is a big thing. And the second thing is we need to give ourselves time to know who we are now, because when we were in that relationship for however long that was, we were that version of ourselves. You know, you're a different version of yourself with that person. Right. You know, that's who you were that whole time. And we influence each other a lot in terms of like how we grow and evolve and change. But you need to get to know yourself all over again. Who are you when you're not that person's partner?
So not only do you not only have you changed because you're no longer in this relationship, but you're a different person. I like how you put that, contextualize that, like you're a different person when you're not with this person, right? In a way. And that is true for many relationships. But like, even with healing, right? I think what you just said makes sense. Like healing and getting to know your new self, or who you are without this person, whether they were really super close to you or not. You're not in that relationship, right? But healing, that's something that I think is kind of important, but it's also how does a person know when they've healed?
What does it mean? Yeah.
What does it mean to heal? Because we hear that so much.
How do I heal? How do I know that I'm healed? Like those are really big. They're kind of like the questions about self-love. What is self-love? How do I love myself? How do I know if I love myself enough? Like all those kind of questions, right? Right. And with healing, it's not even a thing of you need to be 100% healed before you move on, because nobody is 100% healed. That's right. Nobody is, but everyone deserves love. Everyone is still lovable, right? Yeah, so it's like, so what do you do?
Everyone, sure.
We don't have to love them all. Like, we don't have to love them all.
Okay. I'm sorry. That was just my little sarcasm come on.
It's not our personal responsibility to love everybody.
Yeah.
Everyone deserves to be loved, but it's not our
there.
job.
little humor. Some people I just don't know. But I hear you. You're right. Everyone there's someone for everyone, right?
Yeah, right. Everyone deserves love, right?
Right.
But the thing about it is like we just need to heal whatever is the obstacle between us and being willing to love again, being willing to be vulnerable again. So for us, that could be like we've got an abandonment thing that we need to heal. Or like letting ourselves be vulnerable doesn't feel safe for us. Yeah. Right? Or we're afraid that the exact same thing that happened before is going to happen to us again. That's the part that needs to be healed. It's like, do you have to renew your relationship with your estranged sister? No, not necessarily. Like every area of life doesn't need to be healed, but whatever is between you and opening up to new love is what you need to focus on for the healing.
Yeah, I think that's true too. And when you mention abandonment, I think about attachment styles. Mm-hmm. And like when people are in relationships, it's interesting what type of attachment styles they have and develop. And a lot of times that often comes from their childhood experiences. Absolutely. And it surfaces in adulthood. So sometimes people will be in unhealthy relationships, but they're kind of attached because it's comfortable and they're used to it and they know what to
expect. And familiar. That type of love feels familiar to them.
Right. Yeah. It feels familiar.
Yeah. It's not healthy, but it feels familiar. And we do that a lot as adults. Like we really underestimate how powerful familiarity is. And it's so powerful that when we get into a new relationship that's healthy, it feels healthy and good, but it doesn't feel familiar. And all of our self-sabotage stuff will start kicking in.
There we go. Yes. I was thinking about that because I remember my father said some wise words to me. I remember there was this woman who was like, had some hardships in her life. And she had started doing like really good at some point, like really, really good. But upbringing, adulthood, a lot of challenges, bad relationships, just bad, like a lot of just not so good circumstances. Mm-hmm. But that's what she was kind of familiar and used to, unfortunately. So when she started to get a taste of success. She was getting her life in order, getting her children back, reconnecting with family, went back to school, got a degree, just a lot of different, got into some good relationships, a relationship. And then everything, one day she did something that was really, I think like, he told me the story, like I don't want to say she robbed somebody. It was just like something like totally out of character.
Super out of character, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And
really self-destructive.
Very self-destructive, out of like the character that people have become to know. And what happened, the way he explained it to me was like success is scary for a lot of people because they're not used to that sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. And it's scary because they don't know what to do with that feeling like, oh my goodness, things are in order. Right?
So we do that in love too. We do that in love all the time. Like the first relationship you have that's healthy.
Right.
That's so much of what I do when you're asking like, what is a love coach? What do you do? Yeah. Right. Part of it is the healing to help people get ready for love. Part of it is helping them navigate the way that they feel as these new opportunities are starting up. And then part of it is helping them with the self-sabotage tendencies that show up as the healthy relationship is happening, because it does not feel familiar to them to have.
People know when they're self-sabotaging? Do people know?
Not often, because it's usually kind of a subconscious activity. It's like they just know that they feel a pressure. Like, for example, I had a client once who we worked through healing a lot of the things that were going on for her. She had lost her husband, and she had she had a lot of anger she was a widow. He had died in these really bizarre circumstances. Essentially, he had having an affair with someone, and she had no idea about any of those things, but he died in a hotel room from an overdose. In a part of her, like she didn't even know that he, and there was someone there when he OD'd because they called 911, but they weren't there when, the emergency services showed up. So she has no idea who that person was who was with him in his last.
But she had to put all these puzzle pieces together.
Yeah. Wow. And basically it was like, she had no idea who this man was that she'd been married to and had kids with and been with for like 20 years. So not only was she dealing with the grief and the loss, she was also dealing with her anger, how angry she felt. And then going forward, she was even like, how can I ever trust anyone again?
Right.
You
Okay.
know,
So that's healing.
so there was a lot to heal.
Yeah.
We dug into the healing of all of that. And some of it had to do with healing from that relationship. Some of it had to do with going back and healing from things that happened with mom and dad, because they're our number one and number two that teach us what love is, right?
That's right. That's
So we
right.
had those things. Then she started to date. And there's like a progression. So when women first start working with me, usually what's happening is like they go to work, they go home, they may have a girls' night with their friends sometimes, or they're taking care of their kids, but as far as their love life goes, it's crickets. It's like nothing's going on. Nothing's happening. That's usually like what's going on. The next thing that happens is that we start to do the healing work together, and they start to get attention from men. But the men aren't that great, and it's not that great attention.
Okay, so, listen up, people. Listen up. She's giving us some steps here.
So that's the second thing, that when you start healing, that's what will happen. You go from no attention to attention, but it's not great. But you have to go through that. You have to keep moving through that. So, but a lot of times women get there and they're like, I don't need all these idiots getting, coming out of the woodwork and whatever. It's like, no, keep going, keep healing. Because then the next thing that happens is that you get good attention from men who are okay men that you're just not that attracted to, but not like men who are creepy or, something like that. It's like you're getting positive attention from good men that you don't necessarily feel passionately about.
I got you. Okay, I follow that.
Okay. Right. So it's like a colleague at work, right? That you're not like, passionately attracted to them, but they're just giving you good attention, like feedback about what an amazing person you are, and that they're going to be really happy for you. They're happy to see good things happen in your life, that kind of thing. Then the next thing that happens is now you start to get attention that's great attention from the right men, the right kind of men who you're actually compatible with and attracted to. But usually at that point, more than one shows up. So that's what happened with this client. So she had two men come into her life, and she was trying to figure out who she should choose to be with. So at each step, it's interesting because since I work with energy and I work in objective reality with like dating strategies and communication and online dating help and all those kinds of things. But when you look at it, there's like an energetic thing that happens at each of those levels. There's always like a lie that you have to see through. Yeah. And that happens at each level. So at the first level, the lie is there's nobody out here that I could date. Nobody's interested in me. Nobody, that's the lie. The second thing is men only want sex, or, the only people out here are these kind of guys I wouldn't want to be with. The second thing that you see is I'm not attractive to the right kind of guys. Right? Like that's the next thing that you see. So in the fourth stage, when you have two different people coming in, the lie that you have to see through is there is a wrong choice here for me. If I choose one of these men, I will have a happy life. If I choose the wrong man, I will have an unhappy life. That's a lie. Okay. You'll be happy with either of those people because there are multiple right people for you in the world. It's just a thing of like, which thing do you want your life to look like? So with this particular client, one guy was someone who was really spiritual like her. They talked a lot about like reincarnation, and they both had this shared love of like the Dalai Lama, and they talked about spirituality, all this kind of stuff, right? The other guy, much more just like with the first guy, she and him talked about how they felt like they'd been here before. They felt like they'd known each other before. They felt like this really mystical connection. Yeah. The other guy was opposite her and really compatible with her. So he respected how she was very spiritual and she was very free spirit and these kinds of things, but he was very grounded.
He was wounded.
No, grounded. He was grounded. Very grounded. Right.
Grounded. Okay.
So he was like that other side for her, so she had these two different, she could pick the one who was the most like her, or she could pick the one who was the complement of her, right? Like the yin and the yang side of things, right?
Yeah.
So that's like when she got to that point, she went ahead with the guy who was, and I'll get to the self-sabotage. This all ties into the self-sabotage.
Okay, all right, we're going somewhere with this. Right, that's right.
Yeah. So she went with the guy who was more spiritual. She decided to be with him because she just felt this like deep connection and just passion and excitement and chemistry with him. So that's what she went with. Great. But she immediately started to self-sabotage. And the way that she started to self-sabotage was, he was not a jealous man. Mm-hmm. She had lots of male friends. Mm-hmm. She would occasionally have dinner. They would invite, a different friend would invite her out to dinner.
Yeah.
And she'd have dinner with him. And she'd tell her boyfriend about it afterwards. He felt like, I don't mind you going and having dinner, but when you wait until after to tell me, it feels like you're hiding something. So just tell me when you're going.
Yeah.
Tell me when you make the plans, call me or text me and just say, I'm going to go out to dinner with, Chris or whatever tonight.
Yeah.
And not like, she didn't do it like canceling their plans to do it.
Yeah.
She would do it and then not talk about it until afterwards. And she even said, I don't understand why I'm doing that, because I know that he would not be upset with me if I went. And he's told me, I just want to know. I know that me waiting to tell him is actually making it seem like there's something going on. It's actually upsetting to him because it makes him feel suspicious when nothing's going on. I don't know why I keep doing it. Right? So it's that component of the self-sabotage behavior that's like, I am compelled to make this choice that is the opposite of what I'm saying I want in my life. It's creating the opposite effect. And I feel intense pressure to do it. And I can't understand why, because it doesn't make any sense.
So she was still doing it after the fact. Like after he said, can you just tell me? She was still like.
She was still doing it.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had to get into what was going on energetically there and heal that energetically.
I see.
Because what was under that was a fear that this is too good to last. So I'm going to just blow it up before it blows up down the road anyway.
I see. So that's where the self-sabotage is, right?
That's where the self-sabotage came from.
Okay.
Yeah. And really often that's what self-sabotage is. It's this idea that like, it's going to blow up anyway. It's going to end anyway. I'm going to get hurt anyway. So I may as well just blow this whole thing up on my terms.
Where does that thinking come from? Because that's a style of thinking too, right? Where does that come from?
It's a style of thinking, but it's also an unhealed wound. And it's a combination of like unhealed wounds and limiting beliefs, right? It's this idea that like another future for me than what I've experienced is not possible. It will be too scary for me to put my faith in the idea that things could work out. Because if I put my faith in that and I am disappointed again for the millionth time, it will destroy me.
Okay.
So I'm going to always keep one foot out the door just in case.
Yeah, I think, can I make a joke? Not about that. But when people get married, and like say if a woman gets married and to her husband and she keeps her name hyphenated, is that one foot in the door and one foot out the door?
Not if she's built a professional reputation for herself based on her maiden name.
Okay, what if she just...
There can be a lot of reasons why that's not keeping one foot.
I've heard that. No.
But that's the one that first comes to mind for me is like, well, if I've built my professional reputation on my name, I'm not gonna just give it away because of an old concept of like that I need to take his name.
Yeah, and I think that's true on so many levels. And I think the name, but I heard that before, like when you take the name, when like a lot of women who don't take or who hyphenate the last name, they're really not all in it. And no, I've heard that before. Not every single circumstance, but I'm just saying in some circumstances, I have heard that. Like, and I was wondering, is that like a I don't want to say self-sabotage because we don't want to like fall into this patriarchal system, but I'm just being realistic. In some circumstances, with some women, that might be their way of like, I don't really trust you like that. Like,
it might be, but I guess to know if that was a thing, we would have to know the percentage of women who hyphenated and then it ended versus the percentage of women who didn't hyphenate and it ended, and see if one of those groups was bigger than the other, one of those percentages was bigger than the other, because otherwise it's just a thing of like.
But I've heard that from like a lot of old school like folks are like, no. So we'll skip that. But
well, one thing that it could be is, it could have to do with other things, right? It might be like women who have hyphenated their names have women who hyphenate their names, if they're doing it because of their professional reputation, it might mean that they've built a certain career that gives them the financial resources. That if a relationship goes bad, they can leave.
Yeah, it's easier.
There could be, and then there could be women who would leave if they could, who didn't hyphenate their names.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But they couldn't leave because they hadn't built, it's like so many things that we could get into with that. Yeah. Who knows?
I was just thinking, honestly, I was thinking about myself too when I got married, because I was like, because I wasn't in a rush to like change my name like that, like on all my documents and stuff. And then I was like, well, why are you not changing your name? I was like my name is really powerful, like my last name.
Like I love my name.
I love my last name.
My name was a sentence. It was Carisa Lavender Ford. And if you spread it out, Car is a Lavender Ford.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
When your name starts getting into paragraphs and sentences, I think you need to do something with that, okay?
No, it's always hard to say, just because the factors that go into a split are they're so specific to that situation. And it's not just the thing about the personalities of the two people or how they come into it. It's about how they change once they're in it.
That's right. Okay. Right? We'll have to get into that.
How do they grow? Do they grow together while they're in it? Does one person grow and the other person resents that growth?
Yeah.
Like what happens when you're actually in it, Yeah. So there are a lot of things.
There's a lot of factors. So, all right. So can I ask you a question?
No. Yes.
All right. Well, I'm going to say this. All right. Let's say it like this. How can you said 90% of your clients are in successful relationships. Is it that? Am I saying it right?
Yeah. Within 6 months of our work together. So some of that other 10%, it just takes a little bit longer.
Yeah, a little bit longer, but 90% is a big number. That's a good number. So let me ask you this. How is that number so high? Why do you think like some of your folks are, because I think a lot of people are like done. They're like, I'm not going to fall in love. I'm not going to get a relationship. I'm not even going to try. People's trash out here. And again, no, that's what I hear. Yeah, I do hear
they're like, dating is trash. Men are trash.
Dating is everything horrible, right? And they also be saying like, you know what I think messed up dating? I'm not going to lie. And we talked about this. Social media destroyed dating.
Oh my gosh, social media was such
my goodness. Social media is so unsocial, but I feel like, it's my personal opinion, but now there's a lot of stuff coming out on the news and studies that have been done. So, but back in the days, I feel like, I'm still young, okay, don't get it twisted, but from like, I felt like people tried more in relationships, right? Like, I felt like, and this is not every relationship, because there's some really good relationships out here, but I'm talking about, generally speaking, in some ways. So I felt like if maybe a guy cheated on his girlfriend or did something bad, he would try to fix it. Back in the days where they were singing songs like "I'll Give You the Moon," "The Stars."
Oh my gosh, those are my favorite songs. My favorite R&B songs are when he's like begging her to come back because he messed up, and he's just like, "Girl, please, baby, please." Those are my favorite songs. Right? Still like to this day.
They sing. They would love you like, I still love you. They would stand by your window, freaking Romeo and Juliet type of stuff, right? I felt like, so like with social media, so again, things have changed, right? Because now, say this guy's in a relationship with this girl, he does something wrong. Even if he's still going to do wrong things, he may try to fix it. He may appear like genuine in some ways. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I got caught. Like, sorry, right? He might at least fake it a little bit. But I feel like with social media, if a guy gets caught doing something or is just, not satisfied with his relationship or his marriage, he's just like, I don't care. And I feel like there's no Romeo and Juliet no more. There's none of that passionate
Yeah, I remember
crying.
when we were talking about that before, you were saying that you felt like that was the case because social media gave him access to so many other potential partners that he wasn't invested in fixing what he had. You didn't have to
Yes,
invest in fixing what he had.
yes, exactly. So I feel like social media gives people so much access. I love, like, the internet is a beautiful thing. AI, all that stuff, it's a great thing if you're using it for the right reasons. But it could also be very harmful if you're using it for the wrong reasons.
Well,
And
yeah. So there are a couple things, right? First, I'm going to address what you asked me about. Why do I think that my clients have that there's that kind of a
right,
success rate, right? Like to almost 90%. So the reason for that, number one, I'm going to say the reason for that is I've been doing this for like 7, almost 8 years now, and I'm really good at what I do. So
okay,
that's the
now.
first thing.
Okay.
The second thing is that when I work with my clients, I work with them on 2 levels because we're not just trying to attract love. We want to be the person who can sustain a healthy relationship.
That's right.
So we're
Longevity.
working on 2 different things, right? So it's like we work on the level of energy, like getting their energy to the right place. And we work on what do we do in objective reality. So do we have communication skills that we need to learn? Are we looking in the wrong places for potential partners? Are we not clear about what we want from someone so we don't sort
Right.
people out, like how do we need to approach that, so I think that's why that it's almost 90% that are within 6 months that are with the right person. When we're looking at social media, like we were talking about, because we were talking that was the day that we I don't even remember how long we talked that day.
About 3 hours.
We were like,
About
and
3 hours.
we were doing this, and they got too many choices. And,
Yeah.
and I think that is a big thing and I think that we don't just see it in love. I think that what social media does in a way is that it creates this culture of consumption and always wanting more than what we have, never being satisfied with what we actually have, and always having a fake picture of somebody's life being better than ours, and just instead of thinking, because, and even when they show relationships, nobody goes on Instagram and shows like them picking up their partner's dirty socks off the floor and stuff like that. They show me and my partner at the foot of the Eiffel Tower, we're kissing and it's so amazing. There's so many of the same types of videos and pictures over and over again of like couples goals, relationships goals. And there's a reason why that hashtag it's like a million view hashtag, right?
For sure.
Like people put a lot of time and energy into curating a picture that is not true to life of what their relationship is, or even what they want their relationship to be. And then other people look at that and think that it's real.
Yeah.
That's part of it, I think. And I think that the other part of it is that when you have like a crisis of like a lack of self-love, and when people don't know what that means, especially when you have young women who don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Then because women, we are the ones who get to set the sort of like the bar for what's going to happen in the, like men, we have this different energy, like men and women have this different energy, right? Going into it. Women get to say, they can go this far. This is what is acceptable for me. We get to say that, right? And when we constantly are in a people-pleasing kind of mentality, or when we are trying to escape wounds from our past and just not be alone, when we don't develop our own gifts and then learn how to use those gifts in the world in ways that are fulfilling and that make us money so we can take care of ourselves.
Right.
Women start to think of, and I've had clients who have come in to work with me who've been like, I really want to be with a partner who's very, very wealthy. And I'm like, that's cool. Let's also deal with why you only believe wealth can come to you through a partner. Because they'll ask, like, is it okay for me to have a wealthy partner? Is it okay for me to have a partner who makes more than me? Does that make me a gold digger? And I'm like, nope. But let's also deal with why you don't think wealth can come to you unless it's through a partner.
Ah, I like that.
That's
wait, hold on. That's what you're doing with your folks? Like,
that's part of what we do. Yeah.
That's
because
beautiful.
Because you can't love unless it's a choice. If you have to be with someone because that's how all your bills are being paid, you ignore the red flags. You'll do everything you can to stay there because it's about your survival.
Wait, hold on. You brought up red flags, but go ahead. No, I
right?
think,
And they know it. And at a certain level, they know it. They know you have to be there. And if he's not the right kind of person, or not like an emotionally mature person, or he's going through things and whatever, he can exploit that. Like, he knows you don't have other options, It's like, that's a relationship that you should leave because it's a person who doesn't respect you that much and is using money to control you. But because you don't have the financial resources, you can't leave. So you're stuck in this cycle.
So long story short, right? You should, as a woman, you should be trying to become self-sufficient and independent to have your own, especially even if your partner has it, but even in any relationship, you should try to attain your own as much as
because money, it's like, you cannot have, if you're not choosing love freely, if you're there because you have to be there because otherwise you're going to starve and your bills are not going to be paid, that's not love, right?
Yeah.
So
can we say that again? Can we say that again? Because I hear that, I see that image perpetuated so much, like that narrative perpetuated in our music, the culture, like the hip hop culture, the culture in general, TV, social media. I see that imagery of like, oh, before I even get with somebody, he got to buy me this. I'm just like, what? Who talks like that?
And
like,
we haven't even got into the Cheesecake Factory video yet, but
oh yeah,
but remember when you were talking about, so you were like, what do you do when you just come out of the relationship, right? And we were like, well, you want to heal, then you want to get to know who you are. The third part of that is you want to get yourself together financially, so you have a foundation. Now you can choose. And if it doesn't work out, you come back. You come back, and plus we're giving that foundation to our kids.
Wait, hold on.
Our daughters.
It's like, not to cut you off, but so if you don't, so you're saying in a way, if you're more self-sufficient, you can choose in a way which relationships you want to be in, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're not, then those relationships will choose you in a way.
Yeah, like, and you'll feel like you have to.
You have to. Like, someone can come and, this guy can come and say, I choose you, like, because I want, whatever, for all those reasons. And you don't feel like you can say no, or you should say no because this person's taking care of you financially or whatever, right? So if you can come to, I feel like that's so true, because my grandmother had this old saying, God rest her soul, like, no finance, no romance. And when I tell right, but she's old school, but she knew what she was talking about.
My brother just said that to me. He was like, romance without finance, it's an annoyance.
I like that. He just threw that third layer. Romance without finance is annoyance. Annoyance. That was good. We're gonna use that one. But at first, someone hearing that could be like, well, because my grandmother was nowhere near a gold digger, right? She's a hardworking woman, but I think what she was trying to tell us, long story short, sometimes people don't got all day to tell you the whole story. So they got to tell you little,
they got to cut to the chase.
To the chase. But I think what she was trying to say was like, and if there's financial like stability in a relationship, right? On someone, it doesn't mean you have to be wealthy and nothing like that, but just some type of something that's kind of like stable in a way, or then you're at an equal playing field. Doesn't matter who makes more or not, but as long as you're doing something.
Exactly. And it's even a thing of like, some of my clients are wealthier than their partners, but what is important to them is that they have a partner who has ambition and goals, and he's contributing whatever he can financially. Like, he thinks of it as like, we have these goals we need to accomplish together, and this is your part and this is my part. So it's not a thing of like, he's coming in and expecting to just be taken care of financially in every way, and just sitting back not doing anything.
Carissa, I will say this to you. So many of our women are taking care of men. And what I mean by that, you have so many women in relationships where, like I don't want to just say the breadwinner, because sometimes you're not like making a lot of money, but you might even have like Section 8 housing, but you're still taking care of everything. Like, and so I was talking to someone one day who was getting into a relationship, and they was kind of scared. They started to do some self-sabotage stuff because they had never been in a relationship where the person had their own and she had her own. So the conversation wasn't about what I need you to do for me, or who's going to pay rent and bills and arguments over those things. The conversation was more, what's for dinner tonight? Are you coming to my house or am I coming to your house? Right? Or the conversations were totally different versus having to take care of a person. Like, I think a lot of relationships, women fall because we end up taking care of the person. And
because the thing is, we're going to take care of them anyway.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to take care of them on an emotional level. We're going to do all of the emotional labor that's involved in running a household, whether there are kids in it or not. We're going to do all the things that involve like reaching out to people socially. We're going to do all the things that involve like honoring family traditions and holidays and occasions. We're going to do all the things that we're the ones that are like, hey, should we go here for Christmas or should we do this for Christmas? What do you want to do this summer? When do you want we do all of that. We're going to take care of the person anyway, like that.
But I think more so taking care of the person, like
financially.
I feel like if you're not financially stable, the conversations aren't about love. The conversations about needs, right? Like,
Well, yeah, definitely. Yeah. But it's also, because if we're taking care of the person emotionally, mentally, all those kinds of things, then to also have to take care of the person financially puts us in this place where we don't feel like a partner anymore. We feel like a parent.
A parent, and that's too. Let it go. So that person, I had to have conversations with that person because I was like, your problem is not the person. You just never. I said, this person may not be your future husband or whatever, and that's okay. But why don't you get comfortable with actually being in a real relationship? Because that's what having a partner versus being a mother or a parental figure. Yeah, that's not a relationship. And the sis, sorry to tell you, that's what you've been in most of your relationships. Yeah. And that was a hard truth, but it was the relationship. There was a lot of self-sabotage along the way because the person had to was like, oh my goodness, like I keep like they would screw up the relationship because they was like, no, like, and they were so used to and familiar with taking care of people.
Yeah. And the hardest thing, that's the hardest relationship that you are ever going to be in your life, is that first healthy relationship after that string of unhealthy relationships, because it doesn't feel familiar. It feels good, but it's confusing. All your self-sabotage stuff comes up. You can't understand why you're making the choices that you're making. You can tell that you're messing it up, but you don't know how to stop.
Yeah. And that's how it was. It was so funny, the conversations I would have, and I had to like coach the person. Luckily, the person had me as a genuine friend.
You have to have somebody with you to be like, look.
Like, that's wrong. You're bugging. But listen, let me ask you this. And we're going to get into that Cheesecake Factory thing, too. Because I like the Cheesecake Factory. I ain't going to lie. Those
Cheesecake Factory.
Avocado egg rolls is hitting. But let's go. So can I ask you a question about being a love coach? How is love for a love coach, right? Like, if you're an expert, I would consider a love coach an expert in many ways. But if you're this expert or coach on love, well, how do people believe you as far as like, you know what I mean? Like, what's your love life like?
Oh, yeah. So, yeah.
Are you like the barber? Are you like the hairdresser whose hair is always jacked up but can do good hair? Like, who's do the best hair and all her clients are lined up? Or, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and the funny thing about that is, so I was married for 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I was married for 20 years. I have a 12-year-old daughter, and I got divorced last year. The divorce is really amicable. He lives like a mile away. It takes 5 minutes to get there. I probably see him almost every day. Like, it's the best situation for my daughter in that. But I was really worried initially, as I could tell that it was going to be necessary for us to be divorced. I was really worried initially because I was like, who's going to want to listen to a love coach who's divorced and all these things? I was thinking all these things. And then what I realized was that, I had this amazing mentor, and she was like, well, the thing about it is though, Carisa, as a love coach, you did everything that you could for that relationship to be able to be healed, if it was going to last, if it was supposed to last. You can know that you've done everything for that. And some relationships aren't forever, you know.
Yeah.
And then the other part of it was, I really felt like if I hadn't been a love coach, I would have stayed in that relationship.
So
I felt like if I hadn't been a love coach, I would have stayed there. And part of the reason I would have stayed there would have been because I would have believed in the scarcity of love instead of in the abundance of love.
Okay, so love is abundant?
Yeah, there is abundance of love in the world. You know, I would have been like, I better stay here because nobody else will ever want to be with me. I better just make this work. That's what I would have been thinking if I hadn't been a love coach.
Yeah,
but because I'm a love coach, but because I'm a love coach, I was like, oh, no, this is okay. I can let go of this that's not healthy anymore. And I know that healthy love is still out there in the world for me. And it was.
And it was.
And it was. So, yeah. So it was like, you know, and it was so.
I feel like you're cheating, though. It's not fair because you're a love coach, so you know everything to do.
Like, that's not fair. Yeah. Some of my other clients have said that. They've been like, you brought your person in faster than my person's coming in. And I'm like, well, I've built up a lot of good love karma. I've helped hundreds of women have good relationships. I feel like I should be able to have one. That should be okay, you know.
You know what? It's so funny you say that, but you know what? I appreciate your transparency and sharing that too, because I feel like people need to hear that message of, like, you know, sometimes, again, going back to this perception that people have, this perfection of what things should look like and be like. And if it goes a little bit different from that, then something's totally wrong. So for you to be in a long relationship like that and to leave for whatever reasons, right? And to say, hey, I can still get this. I am like, I deserve this and I can get this and I will get this, I think it's beautiful and it's magical in many ways. But I also think that so many women don't see that and don't think, or not even just women, people in general. And
because so much of it, like what gets rewarded in society, but also what gets rewarded culturally for us as Black women, is you stay by his side no matter what. He's gonna put you through hell, but are you a real one? You know, are you ride or die? Like, those are the kind of messages we get. The amount of of abuse or the amount of like suffering that we go through is like somehow determines whether we're real, like that we really loved him. And it's like,
he's a real such and such. You know, thank you for bringing in.
I'm not ride or die. If you're going to be abusive towards me, I'm getting off. I'm not riding. I'm not riding. This is my stop.
That's right. and that's real talk. But I like how you conceptualize and brought and gave us some context around how those narratives are in media. And that's why I like DropAJewwithMalaka podcast, because using our platform to say, no. That's not our narrative, and that doesn't have to be our narrative, and that's not okay. Like,
it's not healthy. It's not a healthy mindset. Like, your whether or not you were a good partner shouldn't depend on how much you put up with. It shouldn't depend on like how much you suffered through and how many times you forgave somebody that was hurting you and that didn't want to grow and didn't want to heal. And that's not what it is. Like, we prize those kinds of things, and even just longevity over like the health of a relationship.
Yeah, the quantity versus the quality. Like, I've met with people who are literally in the worst relationships, and just not happy. And I'm like, well, why? You know, you could leave, you know. And it's not like a relationship where their safety is at risk or they feel like they can't safety reasons leave. It's just, they just feel like, you know,
I've been here a long time.
Yeah.
And sometimes people will pull out like their, you know, well, my grandparents were married for 300 years and he did all these things to her, but they never, and I'll just be like, oh my God, who cares? You know, that's very sad for your grandparents, but that does not have to be your reality.
That does not have to be your reality. And that's something I'm trying to shift, because like, that's what I talk about. Like, you know, when you have an expectation, like you should get in a relationship and just be in there for longevity, then most of your relationships are going to fail. And a lot of people don't realize that because they have these expectations that are unrealistic for them. Right? Just because grandma and grandpa was in a relationship for like 300 years.
For like 300 years.
But, just because they were in a relationship, maybe that worked for them or it didn't, but that doesn't mean that has to be your story. Or some people are chasing that. And then they're like they feel so much more of a failure when it doesn't last that long or the longevity isn't there. And there's so many relationships I've talked to people. I'm like, girl, you dodged that bullet. And they're like, my parents and my family, people are going to look down on me or my religious context are going to look. I'm just like, sometimes people use like religious texts to say justify like why they should stay. And absolutely. I'm not talking about religion, but I also say, well, hey, maybe there's a part in that religious text too that might say why you should leave.
Yeah. Or like that maybe this wasn't the right person to marry in the first place. We cherry pick when it comes to like religious texts supporting what we want to do or what we don't want to do.
Right.
Or negating what we don't want to do. But I think sometimes what happens in those situations too is that there's so much pressure because we have couple privilege in our society, right? We think couple privilege is where you go, we give a better, one version of couple privilege is when we think of people who are in couples as being more emotionally mature, being less spontaneous, being more responsible. It's the reason why, you think about people who are single and like they, when someone is single, people they think that they can talk to them about their personal life and ask them all kind of questions about, well, so when are you going to get married? When are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? As though this person doesn't have agency over their own life or like that they're just never thought about it or, what I mean? It's like people assume that if you're in a couple, you're a more responsible person, you're a more emotionally mature person, you're more settled down and grounded. They make all of these assumptions about people that are single. And as that's part of the pressure that people feel when they don't want to divorce. When you don't want to divorce, it's not just the thing of like, am I going to find love again? It's also the thing of like, when I'm at the parents group, are people going to treat me like a pariah because I'm a single mom? And now all of a sudden all the moms are holding their husbands a little bit closer because everybody thinks I want their man. I'm not thinking about your man.
Did I have to?
Oh, that's happened to me before. Yeah. Where I'm just like, nobody was interested in your man ever. Don't worry about it. It's like, so funny. But that's like a thing that happens where people are like, that's what you're going to be going out into.
Yeah.
And so that feels, it can be pressure to stay, You get a lot of pressure to stay because there's also the thing of like, okay, financially, is it going to work out if I leave? What is my family going to think?
Yeah.
If your friends are all entwined like this, which friends am I going to get to leave with?
Yeah, that's true. Even the pets, even down to the pets.
Yeah. Which pet do I get to have? Do I get to keep our home or do I have to move out? What's going to happen custody wise? All of these things, depending on how entwined your lives are.
Do you think, because I was talking to someone last week and they were just like, they were so depressed and stressed over this relationship that was not really a relationship, but they were like, just like, oh my God, this person is like, got so many other people they're dealing with. And they kind of
like a situationship.
Yeah, they already knew, but they was like upset about one thing that happened within that situationship. And I was like, this, so they were kind of devastated for some time. And I was just like, why are you like devastated? And we were having conversations and I was like, it's okay to start over. Like it's okay to move on. It's okay. But the person just felt so compelled to like date, like go talk to other people, like so quickly. And I was like, you don't pause. Like you're still like back and forth with that situation. You're not here. You're angry. You're upset. You're depressed. You're all over the place. And you go and talk to other guys. Like, relax.
Yeah. And that's a compulsion, right? Because that's like, I am looking for something from somewhere else. That's not a thing of that person's probably not even aware of what that wound is that they're trying to heal.
So it goes back full circle to the wounds. And that's why, as you were talking about, I thought, like, as you were talking about, like, the way you work with people in the context of like healing that wound, and, I think that's so much needed. And I think people need to hear that message of like, you got to heal. And I like how we define within relationships what healing can be like or look like. And starting over can actually be a good thing. It's a wonderful thing, right? Because your journey is your journey, right? Like, your journey is yours, and you're not born with this person or these people that you've dealt with in tragic relationships. Like, you can, just the same way people find bad or in, not healthy relationships or not dissatisfying relationships, they can also find or be in or choose satisfying relationships, happiness.
Yeah.
They can choose happiness. They can choose that. And it can feel like a hard thing to do. But once you take that first step, you just keep on stepping, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
and sometimes people wonder, like, I think one of the biggest things that people wonder when they're in a relationship and things are bad is they wonder, should I leave, or is this a rough patch? Right?
How would someone know when to leave or when it is a rough patch? Because some patches be
Right?
long.
Some rough patches are a long time, right? And I think that the biggest thing that determines that is, are you both actually invested in the relationship getting better? And are you both actually doing the work to make it better? Like, when you go to counseling together, hopefully you're in counseling, right? When you go to counseling and the counselor gives you homework, does one person do it and the other person doesn't?
Right.
When you're trying to get into counseling, is one person for it and another person's against it? We don't need everybody in our business, and we don't need to, it's like, you need to, if you're both moving together, doing your best to move toward it getting better, then you're in a rough patch. If you are the only one trying to make the relationship better, you are not in a relationship anymore. The other person has already left. It takes two people choosing it to have a relationship, right? It's like two people need to choose it every day. The minute one person stops choosing it, the relationship is already over. There's nothing to build. There's nothing to,
it's a wrap.
Yeah. And even if they try to come back, it's not going to work, because you've been abandoned emotionally by that person. And for them to try to earn the right to be trusted again is more than they should actually ask from you.
Are you in my window? I'm just joking. I think you're in my window. No, but all right. So you just dropped some jewels, and let's go to that Cheesecake Factory thing.
Yes, let's talk about this Cheesecake Factory video, because there's a lot here.
So what's the understanding of it? Like, this girl went on a date with a guy. She wouldn't go.
Okay. Yeah. Like, so this is what the understanding that I have of it. Okay. So, and just, I'll also say a disclaimer. I have seen some other things related to this that said that the whole thing was just a skit. I don't know if that's true or not. Who knows? Let's assume that it's an actual thing. Okay. So apparently what happens is these two are going to go out on a date. She keeps him waiting for an hour. He's made reservations for them to have dinner someplace that she would have found acceptable, but she's an hour late getting ready. So now their option is to go to Cheesecake Factory. So they get to Cheesecake Factory, parked the car. He gets out of the car to come around to let her in. She begins videoing.
Check. Okay.
Yeah, she begins to video herself, won't open the door for him. And she begins to say, like, I can't believe he took me to the Cheesecake Factory. How could you take somebody who looks like this to the Cheesecake Factory?
Oh.
So not only is she unhappy with where they're going, but she's shaming him. This is my feeling. I was like, it's one thing to be like, this is not someplace I want to go, right?
Yeah.
It's another thing to shame somebody for taking you someplace or for offering you something.
And he opened the door, right? He was coming to open the door.
He was coming around to open the door. He was like, "You're really not going to open the door to get out of the car?" And she was like, "No, I'm not getting out of the car."
So she started videoing her. Was he on social media? See, I told you this. That see,
See, I told you social media, right? So he gets back into the car, and there's this whole conversation they have where it's basically all her saying, "I can't believe, it's her either being kind of haughty about it and refusing to kind of engage at all, in between saying things about how she's essentially too good to be taken someplace like the Cheesecake
I really
Factory."
hope this is a skit. I really do hope this was a skit.
I
But
hope that it was a skit. What I was really upset about wasn't only this dynamic between these two people. I was also upset about the misogyny and the racism I saw in the comments that were responding. She's Black. I don't know exactly what his racial background was. I'm not exactly sure what his racial background was. She was Black. And the racism and misogyny I saw in comments aimed at her was very unsettling, because it was all things that were like basically like, who does this Black woman think she is? Was kind of like the energy behind these comments.
Right.
Like,
going back to those narratives that we've been talking about, but go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Who does this Black woman thinks that she is? She should be grateful that somebody, it was this whole kind of thing. Now, obviously, some of that is just going to be like, you'd say that no matter what race this other person was. This could be two white people, and you'd be like, who does this woman think that she is?
Right.
Just because, like, why would she? And for me, that was motivated. The way that I felt looking at that situation was like, ooh, why would you ever behave in a way that had such a lack of class on a date? Even if it was someplace that you wouldn't want to go.
Yeah.
You're not marrying this person and you're going to be at Cheesecake Factory or Applebee's or wherever forever, like every night. That's where you're going to go. It's literally like someone is taking you out and you can't respond with grace and class. Like you're literally going to try to put them on blast on social media. Like you're going to shame them in this manner when they're trying to take you out on a date. That I felt like was ridiculous. That just was bad manners. That was just not, that was just tacky. That's what offended me.
Yeah, no, I'm offended just hearing it, but my mind is like racing around like the comments, the skit, or the reality, if that is real, and all these different layers. There's so many layers to unpack here.
So many.
So can I ask you this? Because obviously this is a problematic situation, and it reinforces negative stereotypes for Black women, for relationships. It reinforces a lot of things like that. But if this was a client of yours,
okay,
if this was your client, what kind of work would you do with this person?
So here's the thing. When women work with me, women who would behave in this way do not work with me. They don't work with me because they don't see a need to heal a situation that they're not aware of. So if someone was behaving this way in a situation, it has a lot to do with a deep belief that other people think I am not worthy of good things. So I'm going to prove to them that I am by taking this sort of like over the top arrogant position. Yeah. And so the wound under that is there are people who think I'm unworthy of being treated well, and part of me believes them. So part of me buys into that. So I'm going to go over the top in this other direction and force people to treat me well. Wow. Or I'm going to shame them for not treating me the way I think I deserve to be treated. And someone who's kind of operating from that mental space doesn't come to me. The people who come to me to work with are two different groups of people. One is women who are single moms, got married very young. Their kids are old enough now. They're like in their last year of high school or starting to go into college. And now this woman finally has time for herself. When she got married young. She didn't have a lot of experience dating. The relationship ended. That she got divorced while the kids were in school. She dedicated herself to thinking, I am going to stay single while my kids are in school. I'm just going to focus on getting my kids where they need to be. I'm going to raise my kids. And then as she can see them getting close to that mark, she's like, okay, it's my time now.
Turn. Yeah, it's my turn.
Remember, like
okay.
on Goonies, it's turn down here. It's our time down here. Down here, it's our time.
A lot of people are not even going to know about it. I'm like, Goonies, what's that?
I know, right?
Okay, so who's the other type of woman that will come to you?
The other type of woman who comes to me is a woman who is a C-suite executive, or she's a business owner. She has many people that she is responsible for. She is a high earner and well-educated. And what she usually sees happening is that she ends up dating men who are a little bit younger than her, but really hot with a very good physical connection. So she ends up paying his way because he can't afford her standard of living, but she wants to still have a companion. And often what will happen is she will be with him and it won't be a problem. And she'll be like, I'm just having fun. And then she'll have a birthday that ends with like a 5 or that ends with a 0. And she'll feel like, I'm not where I thought I would be at this age.
I see.
This relationship isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Because what she wants is she wants somebody who takes care of her. And she feels she can suddenly feel that this is off. This person, like we have great sex, but he's not someone who lets me be able to be in my feminine in this relationship. I feel like I'm taking care of him.
Right. That parent, that taking care of that mother figure, right?
Yeah, I'm taking care of him, you know. And then usually she finds that like she can't date people at work. She can't date clients because work is the thing in her life that works really well. She feels confident and fulfilled and successful there, and she doesn't want to mess that up.
Okay.
And very often the only other place that she goes besides work is like the gym. And she's like, this gym works out really well for me. I don't want to mess anything up here either. You know, I don't want to be running into ghosts from my dating past here.
Right.
You know?
I see.
So she's having a hard time sort of just like meeting those other people. And it's not just meeting those other people, but she has fears that she's intimidating to men. She has fears that there just aren't, that the more successful she gets, the less men will be on her level that will be available.
I see. Okay.
And she's not used to operating in her feminine very much because she had to be in her masculine to get where she was. So it becomes really hard for her to actually trust that someone can make a safe enough container for her that she can be in her feminine and receive.
Got it. So it's kind of like half cougar, half boss. No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. No, but I got where you're at. I got it. I totally got it. I just had to throw some humor in there. But so I see how these two different type of clientele are typically attracted to you. Now, we're getting close to the end of the show. This has been a joy. Like we laughed. We talked about serious stuff.
Great.
Yes, we talked about serious stuff. We joked around. We talked about personal stuff. We talked about capitalism and racism and all these different
patriarchy,
and just systems and all these good things. Relationships, love, coaching, social media. I can go on. But I want to say this final part. With all that good stuff we just talked about, with this dialogue, you already dropped several jewels. Like, that's the name of this show. But I'd like you to drop this last jewel. Before you leave today, what is the jewel you want to drop to our audience today? What do you think? Summing up all that stuff, that was a lot of good stuff. And people need to hear it. I think that's why it's an extended version today, but which is fine. But what is the jewel of all that with love coaching and healing? What do people need to hear?
People need to know that you don't make love happen, you make love welcome.
Okay.
And you do that through healing and through the inner work.
Yeah, so you need to welcome. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to fall out the sky.
But you don't have to make it happen. You don't have to put yourself out there more. You don't have to go out running around looking for it. You make it welcome by doing your own inner work. That makes you magnetic to good love.
Oh my goodness. That was beautiful. You only said a few words, but that was powerful in itself. So I think people need to hear that message. And for those who are supposed to hear that, they will hear it. Carisa, where can folks find you? What if some of our listeners are saying, ooh, I would like to be a client? Or maybe they just want to be a fly on the wall sometimes, but they want to be a client. They want to get more information. Where can our listeners and our audience find you?
The best place to find me is on my online home, which is my website. And if they go to Carisa Montooth, which is CarisaMontooth.com, they can find me there. You can email me through the site. You can schedule a session through the site. You can also go to soullovesession.com and you can schedule a call with me where we can talk about how we can help you create the love life that you want and deserve to have.
Okay. And my last joke, perhaps, we want to test this product out, right? Maybe I'll have to test it out for our audience.
That will be lovely. Then you can report back.
Yes, and we will report back. This is part of my, journalism part.
Right. It's due diligence.
Right. I got to make sure. Well, Carisa, thank you so much for being on the show. It has definitely been a pleasure. And folks know where to find you. So continue to do this great work that you're doing. And folks, you have the jewels today. So make sure you take those jewels and do something with them.